Welcome to Pharma Insights Unplugged, a platform where we engage with thought leaders shaping the future of healthcare, medical affairs, and clinical research. I'm your host, Dr. Amit Dang, and through this series, we aim to explore the evolving landscape of pharmaceuticals, digital health, and evidence based decision making. We are excited to welcome Dr. Aditya Pathak, who is currently serving as Medical Director at Pfizer Singapore, leading oncology across the MISP cluster. With decade-plus experience, Doctor Pathak has held pivotal roles in global pharma, having worked at MD Anderson Cancer Center, Roche, Novartis, Sanofi, and AstraZeneca. His deep involvement in clinical research, oncology, and immunology, alongside his advocacy for public health engagement, makes him a prominent voice in the transformation of medical affairs in Asia and beyond. So, good morning, Dr. Aditya Pathak, and welcome to Pharma Insights Unplugged.
Hi, thanks a lot, Dr. Amit, for this wonderful opportunity, and I'm honored to be part of the Pharma Insight podcast. Before we start, a quick disclaimer that the opinions that I would express today in this podcast are my personal opinion, and this would not be related to my position at Pfizer.
So, Dr. Pathak, your journey from the academic research at MD Anderson to leading global medical functions is truly inspiring. So, what motivated you to transition from academia into the pharmaceutical industry?
My father is a pathologist. Since my childhood, I've been seeing, the patients waiting outside early in the morning to get tested. And it was very clear that I want to become a doctor, much like my father. I did that, and after my medical graduation, I wanted to pursue a degree that is rich in clinical research. Subsequently, I completed Master of Public Health at the University of Texas and MD Anderson Cancer Center is part of University of Texas, and I could do the research there. I was working as a research assistant, and it was my first foray into the clinical trials. My first experience of how the drug delivery happens from the clinical trials to the phase three, then to the market authorization, and so on and so forth. And it was absolutely amazing to be part of those
Got it.
labs. I was working on the non-small cell lung cancer circulating tumor DNAs. And when you are strictly into that whole clinical research, it gives you a different perspective altogether. And during that process, I got introduced to the pharma industry. It was quite clear to me that if I work in industry, in
Right.
medical affairs primarily, or in drug development, I would have equal impact to the patient care as I would do it as a clinician or even as a pathologist. And post which I venture into pharmaceutical industry, and I don't repent even a single minute of that decision.
You are the chosen one, and you absolutely had a clear idea that yes, this is what you really wanted that time. So, like, how has your research background influenced your approach to leadership in medical affairs, particularly when collaborating across R&D, clinical development, and commercial teams?
I think this is very important because if you see across different domains of medical affairs, be it medical education, be it real world evidence, be it value creation for the health technology assessment, patient voice recognition and engagement, uh, more relevant is digital and data analytics. At each of these pillars, the clinical trial, the understanding of clinical trial, the implementation of the data is crucial. And as I was able to understand the nuances, not only the structure, but also the delivery of it, how really the outcomes of those clinical trials should be delivered across the different arms of the healthcare delivery from the pharma side. So with that experience, it really helped me to scale those elements in industry as I worked. Even the minor aspects of clinical trial translation into clinical communication is extremely important. And that's where, again, my learnings came really handy. If I may add the real world evidence, right, that is becoming extremely important. By 2023, there was about 2 trillion gigabytes of healthcare data available. And
Right,
this is the base with which we are standing on. And we need to
right,
make the sense of that data. Take that data, put that into evidence, and then make use into your medical communication, create the value for health technology assessments,
right,
inform your stakeholders. You have patients, you have payers, you have academics. We need to
right.
broaden the horizons of our engagement. And that is where your real world evidence comes into picture.
Do you really believe that it's necessary to have an MD, PhD, or MBA to attain leadership role in medical affairs, or are other pathways equally valuable?
This is very relevant. And to tell you, in short, it is not necessary to have MD or PhD in specific. It is good if you have it, but it is not necessary. And I'll elaborate a little bit further. Now, in industry, there are largely two verticals of growth in medical affairs. If we see the vertical growth, right, there is a growth in the cross functional, there is a horizontal growth. But if you see the vertical growth, there is a linear in country growth where you go up to a medical director's position and you are an enterprise leader. That's one vertical growth. The second one is the therapeutic area expertise growth, which is primarily going into a cluster, a region, or an international global role, right? In my experience, I have seen that many leaders who do not have PhDs or MD degree are leaders across the domain, primarily into the TA expertise or the regional and the global vertical. So if you take correct steps, if you learn, if you build your skills, if you take more responsibilities, then you can be a leader irrespective of your degree. Naturally, the base, the scientific base should be there, which would be a basic requirement in medical affairs. But beyond that, it's not mandatory to have MD or PhD degrees. What is most important is that how you build your skills. Are you building the skills which are relevant now and the next future? Now, where MD degrees would be necessary in certain markets, certain countries, because of the external regulations, because of certain pharma codes, certain positions, leadership positions are required to have a medical degree, and that's where the MD degree would be necessary, and it's a mandatory requirement. Whether MBA is necessary. So MBA, it's a very good degree to have. It's not just for the marketing. Sometimes we may believe that, look, I will do MBA because I want to go into commercial function. Yes, you can do that. That gives you a lot of theoretical understanding, but it really helps on the broader perspective to understand how the business functions, how the
Right.
financial cycles are constructed, how the leadership happens. What, there's a good understanding of the consulting, right? How the data analysis should be done. So those are the domains which really help if you do a full-time MBA going forward. And if you take a look at McKinsey report or MAPS report, it is very clear that having the business enterprise mindset, being a true business partner, is an area where the medical affairs should focus on. And the leaders of tomorrow will be adept to that. So net degrees are important from the science perspective, but beyond that, it is about how we take our journey forward.
Right. There has to be a business acumen with every medical affairs personnel because at the end, the pharmaceutical companies, they have to make profits out of the whole model to make sense out of that.
Absolutely.
How has the field of medical affairs evolved over the last decade, especially in terms of its role in supporting early stage clinical development and, as you mentioned, about the real world evidence generation?
I think a decade back, early phase development was primarily from academia and the industry, and then it would take it forward. It was a linear progression, right? Now, what is happening is the other element have come into picture, and what has happened is the medical affairs inputs. I think most of the global pharmaceutical organization now would have an element of medical affairs even at the early phase development. Let's say good case in point would be those molecules where the therapeutic window is narrow, which means that there is a high chance of adverse events happening for the efficacy that the products would deliver. Now, it is important that some data points should be available from the real world perspective. The another data point that should be available is the patient reported outcomes. Patient voice has become extremely crucial in those areas as well. As we move forward, I believe the overall early phase or the mid phase will become extremely stronger.
So, how should medical affairs teams approach this whole idea of real world evidence planning to create the maximum value across the product life cycle?
This should start from the insight generation or analytics. What is the current gap that we need to understand? This then should be married to your product strategy. So you have a global enterprise strategy. Then you have within that therapeutic area your product strategies, and then your local requirements. So you need to match these 2 points, product strategy with your local insights, and then you will be able to understand what are my enterprise company needs. And then based on that, you go on to develop real world evidence. Now, it can be for clinical practice because the phase 3 trial does not include certain patient population, and inclusion of those patient population is essential, and we need to generate the data.
Right.
And in today's world where it's a personalized medicine, there are racial differences, genomic
Right.
differences, there are differences in healthcare delivery, access differences. It is essential that we generate the data locally. So that's a clinical practice. The second part is more from the health technology assessment perspective. And many health technology assessments nowadays would need local data. The clinical trial may not have the complete representation of certain population. And if that population is important for local health technology bodies, then development of this real world evidence becomes extremely crucial. Is it something to do with the patient element? Because as I said, the PROs have now becoming important.
Okay.
Are we capturing that patient voice that would relate more in terms of the medical affairs impact? Or
Right.
sometimes it is mandated by regulatory bodies that they need this evidence. So once we know what is the purpose and objective of real world evidence, it is much more easier to craft the program and continue it. One area which is always debatable is the real value of real world evidence. Why
Yeah.
investing in real world evidence? What is the outcome? Because we already have phase 3 trial published. There is perhaps a regional publication as well. So why do we need the local, or why do we need even the cluster based? Why do we need even the region based when the global is available? So it is really essential for a medical affairs leader to also craft what is the written on that investment. And when I say written, it's not about the revenue, right? It's more about the patient impacts. What's the change that I'm going to bring about in clinical practice if I were to generate this real world evidence?
Yeah, because not all the times one could expect a label expansion using the real world evidence. So indeed, focusing on the ROI certainly becomes important for pharma to understand.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You had an experience in the oncology domain. So what are the most critical contributions that medical affairs should make during early phase oncology drug development to shape a therapy's future success?
I think this, I would be able to connect it to what I alluded earlier, that medical affairs now would play an important part in the early phase development as well, and especially so in oncology, because
Got it.
oncology is an area which is developing exponentially in terms of the data generation, in terms of the need externally that we see. And if I go a little granular, medical affairs is the custodian of the local knowledge of the ecosystem, how the management happens, who are the important stakeholders, who are those principal investigators, which are the societies that are working, what are the clinical trial networks, what are the infrastructure gaps, what are the challenges in terms of the access, what is the clinical trial turnaround time, if the phase 1 units are available, if the late phase development is feasible. So all those aspects are with the medical affairs team. It is extremely essential that medical affairs team collaborates thickly with the global development team. And when that collaboration is successful, I have seen absolutely fantastic outcomes. And you supply that information, you will be able to then append your data generation, be it real world evidence or any existing registry related data in the early phase as well, so that the early phase team is well aware and they can maneuver their programs accordingly.
Dr. Pathak, what key skills do you believe medical affairs professionals must cultivate today to stay relevant and impactful over the next 5 to 10 years?
Classically, for medical affairs, medical education publication has been the bread and butter, and then collaborations with your cross-functional team to make sure that you are the true business partner in terms of the overall strategy. Now, going forward, there are a couple of elements which are becoming very clear. The first one is real world evidence, right? And we have spoken a bit about it. The applicability is huge, and this will only continue because the data is getting built day by day, and how to extract and how to put that relevant to your product strategy becomes very important. I think the next is the healthcare technology assessment value creation. And the reimbursement becomes important.
Yeah.
And all the markets are more gearing towards forming a reimbursement bodies. For medical affairs, it becomes really important to understand how the value needs to be communicated. And
Right.
Dr. Amit, you are an experienced and you run such beautifully such a big organization in terms of HEOR perspective. So to
Right.
me, that understanding and creation of the value along with your access colleagues is extremely important. Medical affairs also definitely would be the primary source of contact from the scientific content perspective. Many a
Right.
times the HTA bodies will have a different population consideration than your indication, will have some of the challenges which are very local, wherein your global clinical trials may not address it. And this is where medical affairs team comes into picture, and the leadership here is absolutely needed.
Still, I truly believe that the whole HEOR is so closely related to the medical affairs function, and perhaps this is the reason that many companies, the HEOR function is now under the medical affairs domain. Although they do
Absolutely.
have different teams, but yes, there is a kind of an amalgamation that is happening between the domains.
Absolutely. And if I expand it further, I think the policy value creation is also very important. So what we need is to expand it to the government officials as well. That do we know who are the decision makers in terms of certain policy shaping perspective? Let's say for oncology, do we know who is the part of the national cancer plans and what are the national cancer plans and how from medical side we can collaborate with
Right.
them, learn from them, and adopt certain elements which is more impactful from the patient perspective or the healthcare practice shaping perspective. So we need to interact with the broader stakeholders as well, who are the institutional heads. Although they may not be our direct customers, but from policy perspective, these institutional heads would become extremely important. So do we have our communication with them? And last bit is the digital and data analytics. It is very clear that medical affairs would function on digital and data analytics. So AI is one area where applicability is now becoming very clear across different domains, be it analysis of your insights, creation of the content, email writing in the clinical trials. So utilization of the AI and the data analytics is absolutely essential.
And that brings us to a last question for today's podcast. For medical affairs professionals aiming to grow into senior leadership, what career advice would you offer in terms of mindset, skill building, and industry navigation?
I think what is most important is to get experience, get your networking strong, and focus on learnings. Okay. This is essentially based on Center for Creative Leadership formula of 70-20-10. So we have to make sure that your learnings or your growth is primarily driven by experience, which is the 70%. You need to get that experience. And once you get that experience, you need to stretch a bit. You need to go a little beyond what you've learned and then scale onto that. So in medical affairs, the medical affairs colleague should focus on the core priorities, your education, real world evidence and publication, and all the elements that we just
Yeah,
spoke about. Build your base very strong there and then expand it to learn different areas of medical affairs. If you want to scale higher, you can also go and explore the cross functional areas.
got it.
You can go into the commercial field, and medical affairs field is such a functional which I think is very modular. It's very
Right.
flexible. You can go into commercial, you can go into the clinical development, you can go into the PV, you can go into the RA. And it is essential that you get the experience. How you get the experience? Speak with your managers, do the stretch opportunities, do the growth gigs, do those short secondments if they are available. And those are extremely important. Although it will stretch you a bit, it will add additional work, the learnings will be huge. And with that, you will be able to scale up higher. Don't shy away from going to another region, another country, another culture, another ecosystem really enriches your experience. Second, the 20 part is about networking, mentorship. Mentor, absolutely important in your career.
Yeah,
It will change your trajectory. Do the networking as much as you can. Speak with senior colleagues you think you will learn from. Speak with them. Sometimes we don't value this so much, or sometimes we are a little guarded. Hey, should I go to this senior leader? I don't know if
yeah.
he or she will speak with me, right?
Yeah.
But don't hold that thought and just go and do it. There are wonderful leaders across the board and they will be helping you, right? Last bit is education. Any education definitely helps, be it the formal like MBA or MDs or even the smaller certifications. Those are extremely important. And the learnings that are available in your company, those are really important. That allows you to have the enterprise hat, right? So these are the areas. If you employ, then definitely you grow. It is extremely important that we all have the enterprise vision. So what company strategies are, how companies are moving, we should adopt it and function along with it. It will bring a lot of value to us as individuals.
It's really great to know that, you have mentioned the role of managers, the mentors, the colleagues in the personal growth. Really good to know that, there's so much of importance of everyone around you for your own
Absolutely.
growth.
Absolutely.
So, Dr. Pathak, thank you so very much for sharing your remarkable journey and deep insights with us today, from driving early clinical development to shaping real world evidence strategies and building future ready medical affairs teams. Your leadership sets a powerful example for the next generation of industry leaders. It's been a privilege having you on Pharma Insights Unplugged. I would really like to thank you to come on the platform.
Thanks a lot once again. I'm truly honored to have this dialogue with you and be part of the Pharma Insights. Thank you once again.